Hello everyone, I'm Nicolas. I've been a developer since a decade now, and during that time I made a lot of mistakes, and today I want to share one of them with you. And preparing this talk led me to what I called the first feedback we get. This is why this talk is this way. I will start by telling you more about that mistake, and after that, we'll explore a couple of delivery processes, and the goal will be to find ways to avoid that mistakes to impact our users. Then we'll see how the story ended. So I work for a car-sharing marketplace, which is called Getaround, and one of the main features of a marketplace is to process payment and move money from one customer to another. So we use Stripe. One of the main, we process many thousands of payments per day. And at some point last year, or maybe the year before that, we learned about a new regulation that will impact all those payments. And that's the one in the example of Brittany. The deal has been altered, and we had to migrate from one API to a completely different one. Before the regulation, we will ask our provider to charge a customer, and we will immediately get an outcome. The transaction will either be a success or a failure. And after the regulation, Stripe could ask for an extra authentication that must be performed by the customer. And in that case, the transaction stay in a suspended state. We needed to let our customer interact with their bank in order to resume that transaction and get to a final state. None of our abstractions around payments or around customer interactions supported resumable transaction. That made this project pretty challenging for me. Something I was mentioning about the context. I don't usually work with mobile application, which make a lot of the constraints new to me, such things as maintaining backward compatibility for old clients. I was really new to this. The company had been acquired for a few months at that time, so the stakeholders were pretty busy doing strategy, integration, and rebranding from Drivey to Getaround. So, yeah, one more thing. And then the deadline fixed by the regulator was coming closer and closer, and the API from Stripe were still not fixed, still a bit moving, so all that was pretty stressful. But it was not only about the context. I wasn't sure I could do it, and even assuming I could do it, payments are a very sensitive thing for a business, and I know I frequently make mistakes. I was pretty scared to break something, which is exactly what happened. So this is the mistake I made during the refactoring. We use, if you're familiar with Stripe, you will see right away what's going wrong. Otherwise, I will explain a bit. We use the authorize and purchase method to create a charge on Stripe, and we pass the capture option to false. We don't actually take the money from the customer's bank, and instead, we reserve the funds for later. And when the capture option is set to true, we take the money right away. So as you can see, later, this will lead us to think that we're taking the money, but we are actually not taking the money. As Daniel said, what could go wrong? We know the likeliness of this mistake now. It's very likely because you just seen it. So I was more optimistic at the time, but not by much. I knew that something will go wrong. So now let's think about how bad it can get. Our service would be free for our user, good. But we will be paying our other user with our own money, like the people that are enlisting their car, they will have to be paid, and somebody has to, and that could be us. So at some point, if you do that long enough, you run out of cash, you cannot pay employees or partners, and those partners, they start lawsuits against you. And because our directors are responsible, maybe they go to jail. I don't know about you, but I don't want to put that on my resume. At that point, I hope I convinced you that I was afraid. I think we can manage that stress and reduce the risks by relying on the delivery process. A company tries to solve the problem. In our case, the problem was to keep up with a new regulation. Then we try to find a solution. We brainstorm, we negotiate, we estimate, and so on. And at some point, the stakeholder and I, we agree on a shared understanding that we will actually do and try to send to our user. And my job is to move the common understanding to our users. And to do that, I will follow some steps, and in those steps, to put together, they are what I call the delivery process. So the simplest process I can think of look like this. I edit the code locally, I upload it to a production server, and voila. This is available to all our users. Many of us worked that way in the past, and probably some of you still work that way. It can work pretty well in some contexts, like if it is your personal website, but for a team of that size and for the marketplace, that looks dangerous. This chart shows how my stress level evolves as I am going through this process. So moving that understanding from my mind to production. As I said, I wasn't sure I could even do the thing. So when the code is ready, I usually feel a bit better because that's less unknown. And then I will have to send the code to the server, and I draw a big spike around the release because I don't know if it will work or if it will break. In that scenario, no one checks what I do, so I have a lot of pressure on my shoulder. And over a certain limit, stress can be painful. I can work longer hours, I can skip meal, I can lose sleep, and I can be rude. And I could go on. I think the process we've just seen for that change would put me over that limit all along. This is why I draw that line here. If I'm subject to that high stress long enough, I don't have much choices left. I can either escape, fight, or I can give up. Escaping is like asking to be reassigned to another task, or more simply, leaving the company. Fighting is requiring more resources, asking for more time, or for more people to help you. Or it could be, fighting could also be building a case and talk to the team into improving the process. And giving up, it's mostly like staying silent, even if you know that the project will fail. And in the past, I think I offered all those responses myself. And probably you did too. We cannot escape stress, and we have to respond to it. So the sooner I am aware of my own stress, the more I have control over the response I give. That's because the more I endure the stress, the less energy I have. Instead of leaving or giving up, I can use my energy to fight and challenge the process. That process would have been too stressful. Nothing was preventing me to introduce that bug, so let's try to fix that. We now have a staging environment, exactly the same as a production one, and before sending new code to our user, we would release it in that safe environment where stakeholder will test it. You can see that the release spike is almost gone now. I'm less worried because I saw that the code was working well in staging, so that's great. And this manual QA, it spreads the responsibility both on the stakeholder that are doing the QA and on myself that is doing the code. So less responsibility means less stress. But this new step is here to test the understanding we had between the stakeholder. It is not good at finding regression. Unfortunately, the bug was not easily visible during the QA. Our back office was showing exactly the same as usual, which is a successful payment. I was afraid of regression, not about a misunderstanding. So I expect a healthy process to bring my stress down to a certain level where I can release with confidence. And this makes for another threshold. So we now have 3 areas. I don't know if they show well here, but yeah. High stress or pain at the top, comfort at the bottom, and growth in the middle. And in the comfort area, if I stay long enough here, I'm not learning much anymore, I get bored, and probably get sloppy. In the growth area, I can learn, I feel challenged and motivated, so I want to find balance between this area. My target is 60% growth, 30% comfort, 10% pain. We are not aiming at the same ratio. What about you and what about your team? So with that process, it was better, but I didn't reach the comfort area where I could release. Some steps will reduce stress and risk better than others. In the next delivery process, let's try to add a more appropriate step. In my experience, the best way to prevent regression is to have a good automated test suite. And in this process, we have one. We write tests in forever, and all use cases are covered. That's a dream test suite. We only release when the test passes, and can you raise your hand if you do something like this, like only releasing when the test passes? And keep your hands up if you never had a bug in production, a regression. OK. Some hands. OK, so tests, they're not that reliable. And I knew it too. If you look at my stress level here, it even starts from the beginning way lower, because just the idea of having a test suite would make all the project, all the way less stressful. I will feel more relaxed. And as I said, I was afraid of regressions. So I trust the test suite to catch them, and I really wanted that code to be safe because I was really afraid of it. So when I saw that the test suite was green, I was super happy, and my stress level was, I was relieved. I did trust the test. I was confident. So at that point, I have no warning signal. Like the stress was low enough for me to release. And this is exactly what happened. Like I was confident enough, so I released. And this is how that bug ended up in production. A green test suite have less impact on me now. The confidence threshold I have moved down, and the boundary of pain, growth, and comfort area, they are constantly moving, adapting to my experience and my mistakes. And by doing retrospective, post-mortem, and being mindful of how I feel, like every day, I can just adapt and learn faster than I would do, like just shutting down. So did the company went down? Would I be speaking if it was the case? I hope so, but I don't know for sure because we actually recovered. And here is how. Remember that slide? Actually, the delivery process goes beyond that. Once the code is in production, I keep asking the same question: what could go wrong now? Is everything working as I expect? When will it break? Will it break? When will it break? What will be the impact? Will I lose customer? Will I lose money, data, or my job? Will I get some feedback? And with that feedback will be early enough. So that uncertainty impacts my stress level too. Not knowing if something is wrong slowly raises my stress level. But we can avoid the uncertainty and limit our stress by using well-known strategy, like we can limit the impact of a release, we can automate feedback to find bugs before our users do, and by building our code and infrastructure to be more observable. And this is a more detailed version of the process I actually used to release that change. So code review, they could have detected that bug in theory, but my pull request was actually too big, and this commit was super boring. Using the best step is good, but you have to use it right. In that case, I decided not to split that pull request. It was more work. I felt I didn't have the time with the deadline, and above all, I felt safe enough because I had the test green. We also have gradual rollouts. They limit the impact a new feature can have by making the change only available to a portion of our users. So because the risks are reduced, the stress is not climbing as much. And with some monitoring, I can do a kind of a cycle of rolling out a bit, monitoring, rolling out a bit more, and so on. Looks simple. I did roll out to 5% of our users, and I was really monitoring, like very closely what happened to those users and everything. But actually, the bug impacted the other 95%. So I was still, I was focused on what I think could break, and I was still relying on the test suite to cover for those 95%. After a couple of days, I got a crash report. An error from Stripe was saying something like, you cannot refund the money that you didn't take. Actually, on Stripe you can, but the message says you cannot partially refund something you didn't take. Because I was able to observe our system, and because the dashboard of Stripe is really nice, it was easy to spot the error. So in a couple of hours, I could find the fix, release it, add the missing test, monitor the right things, and capture all the payments that were supposed to be. So pretty much no visible impact except on me. In the end, any mistakes leads me to challenge the process for evolution, to adjust my judgment and decision-making, and to improve the existing steps. And about that last part, adding a new metric in a monitoring tool or adding a missing test, they are not the most exciting thing to do. Yet, those small improvements, given enough time, they compound into the most robust process. They will make the biggest difference, bigger than good judgment and bigger than the latest tool you can get. And that's it. You know the whole story. How I made a silly mistake, probably by copy-pasting stuff, how I trusted the test suite, and how that trust continuously blinded me during the rest of the process. On each step, I was, kind of trusting the test. I hope you noticed that a good delivery process can save you from yourself, or save me at least, and give me the opportunities to learn instead of killing the company. So the delivery process is a core part of our work. It protects us, it helps us grow, it transforms bugs into opportunity, but in the end, it is the team, the people, that transform those opportunities into improvements. And our stress and mistakes, they are feeding that process. But stress is very personal. No one has the same level of pain or confidence, and no one knows or uses the same tool the same way. And that should be considered a strength, actually. So stress is the first feedback we get. It can be hard to share, hard to receive, and hard to leverage, but if you embrace it, your team will be great. Thank you.
Question?
I wanted to say a huge thank you to my team, because that kind of environment, it's not easy to get. And since I make a lot of mistakes, it's a place where I can learn a lot. So thank you to them. I wanted to thank you also, Michel and Agathe, for the help during the preparation of this. And obviously, thank the rest of the organizing team of the conference. So if you have any feedback or reaction you would like to share, please find me after this session or online. And if you have questions, maybe, just ask your team about it and discuss together, because I may not be the best person to answer. That's it.